Greetings, Earthlings! Welcome back to 7th Street. This has been a really interesting time for me lately. Some of my reference this film episodes have been falling a little bit flat, and I haven't been getting the number of views that I've wanted to, and it's kind of made me second guess some of the movie choices that I've been doing, so I've been trying to take a little bit more time with them and maybe branch out and do some different types of reviews. So today I wanted to do something a little bit different and talk about something new. Something that I believe is still running. I'm not sure how many episodes are left. I know that it was just renewed for a new season, and that would be the Creepshow series that's on Shudder, which totally blew me away. I am a huge fan of anthology horror films and anthology TV series, especially goofy ones that are taking off of sort of the EC Comics type stuff. I'm a huge fan of Tales from the Crypt. I mean, I've seen every episode multiple times, have all the seasons on DVD. Same thing with Twilight Zone, The Outer Limits, even One Step Beyond, even lower tier ones, and so on and so forth. I have not been the biggest fan of recent anthology films and series. I know that everyone blows the VHS films, and I'm just not the biggest fan of those. I'm not even the biggest fan of Trick or Treat, really. And likewise with some of the TV shows that have come out. Just was not the biggest fan of Black Mirror. I felt like it was a little too pretentious and trying to be a little bit too heady. And that's not to say that it wasn't good. There were definitely good episodes. It just didn't capture my imagination the way that I really like anthology series to really capture my imagination. And that also goes for Jordan Peele's reboot of The Twilight Zone. Just for whatever reason, wasn't the biggest fan of it. It was just a little too social justice-y, and I understand that the original Twilight Zone series was very political, and even if this is like a political viewpoint that I tend to agree with, it felt a little too, it was just insisting upon itself a little bit too much. So I was really not that confident that the new Creepshow series was going to be any good. It kind of seemed like they waited for George Romero to die so that they could get the rights to it, and I just felt like they would really screw it up. And on the contrary, you know, Shudder never ceases to surprise me. They release some really good original content, some really good original films. Joe Bob's Drive-In is fantastic. So Shudder has really surprised me over the past few years, and I held out with getting a subscription to Shudder until, you know, the last year, really, and I've just been completely blown away. Now, that's not to say that Creepshow is flawless. It has things that I think are fantastic, and some things that are not so fantastic, but for the most part, there hasn't been anything about it that I just flat out didn't like, which I assumed that at least half of it I would just flat out not like. So what I kind of wanted to do here was just give a little bit of my overview, and my rating of the first season, now that it's been renewed for a second season. And I also just kind of wanted to talk about some things that I really liked and some things that I was just sort of lukewarm on. Starting with the good, I think, is always the best place, and the first episode is fantastic. With Creepshow, you have like a 40-minute runtime, 30 or 40-minute runtime, and you have two short films within that 30-minute runtime. And the first episode really nails it. The first episode is a retelling of Stephen King's short story Gray Matter, and it has Adrienne Barbeau returning to the series, which is awesome to see her. I think his name is Tobin Bell. He's Jigsaw. He also is in this episode, and I mean, if you've read the short story Gray Matter, you already know what happens. I don't want to give away too much, but it's just a great way to start off the series with like this thunderstorm and this spooky night, and this like teenager comes into this like convenience store bar while everyone's preparing for this big storm, you know, and he's there to buy alcohol for his alcoholic father. and he ends up getting Tobin Bell and one of the other characters to go like check on his dad. And it ends up being kind of a setup for a trap, which is really cool. I had already read the short story, but I thought that was just like a fantastic way to start it off, and the effects in it are awesome. I mean, some of the effects in this show are hit and miss at times, but Gray Matter just blew it out of the water. They really went all in on that episode. You could tell that they wanted it to be the first episode. The second episode in the first episode is probably my favorite short thus far that I've seen. And it's one that's called Head of the House, and it's so brilliant, and explaining it doesn't do it justice, but it's about this little girl whose parents buy her this dollhouse, this old like Victorian dollhouse, and she becomes obsessed with like buying these dolls to have this little family in her dollhouse, and she keeps coming back and checking on the dolls, and they will have like moved on their own, and she soon finds out that the house is haunted, and there's this little head that's like floating around and haunting this family. And the little girl doesn't tell her parents, obviously. She just like, she tries to find different ways to like help her doll family solve their haunted house problem. And she ends up like buying like a cop doll from the doll store, and her mom and the guy at the doll store are like, "Are you sure you want to get the cop doll?" And she's like, "Yes, I want to get it." And then like, long story short, like the head ends up killing the cop doll, and the doll family is still being haunted. So she ends up going, and like, there's this great scene where she goes in there and she's asking the person who owns the doll store if he has a priest, because she needs something spiritual. And the mom and the guy who owned the shop are just like really weird about it. They're like, no, we don't have any like priests or rabbis or anything. And the little girl's like, what do you got that's spiritual? And like, she ends up buying like this Native American doll, and I'm not gonna ruin the ending for that one either. It's really one that you should check out. It's my favorite thus far. It's so well done, and I explain it to people, and I know in their head they're picturing like these animated dolls in this like dollhouse, and it's not like that at all. You never see the dolls move. The little girl just keeps coming back, and they're like moved in different places with different expressions on their face. It's just a phenomenal episode. Some other really good episodes that I've seen thus far, there's a take on the Monkey's Paw tale that is almost flawless, with this girl who gets in this car accident. She's like running from the police, and you over time realize that she killed her husband, who was dying of cancer, like gave him a mercy killing, but now she's like, she's a criminal now, so she's on the run, and this old man who runs like this funeral home takes her in, and then tells her that she was supposed to be there. He actually wished for her using this monkey's paw, and he goes back and tells this story about how like his wife made all these wishes and got killed by the monkey's paw. And how it's like all destiny, and like he doesn't want to commit suicide. He wished for a killer to come kill him, and it takes like these really interesting twists and turns. The only thing, sort of spoiler alert, the only thing that I didn't really like about this one, the original Monkey's Paw tale deals with like zombies or ghouls of a sort. But it's not like the traditional Romero zombie, and sometimes I don't like when every zombie tale has to go like the Romero flesh-eating zombie route, and that's what this one sort of does in a couple places, and that kind of bugged me. But other than that, I was totally on board with it. I thought the color in this episode were great, especially when the old man's like at the graveyard digging up his wife. It's just shot beautifully, and it's definitely shot on a soundstage, so it's kind of got that like universal horror look, very comic book like. You can tell that they got directors, like new directors for each story, but that they were very much like, hey, we have to keep this like in the Creepshow, like in that vein. and you can tell that they're pretty strict with it being very comic book-like, using like a lot of weird, vivid, bright neon colors and stuff like that, like a comic book panel. And that's something that even the Tales from the Crypt series didn't really do. They kind of lost that comic book feeling as the series went on, and I really hope that Creepshow doesn't do that. I hope they keep this going, because it looks really cool in some spots, especially that Monkey's Paw episode. There's also a really good episode that's like a Killer Scarecrow episode, which is always something that's like welcome in my book. I've always thought that you get a good Killer Scarecrow episode and you get an A+. I don't know why. Ever since I've been a little kid, I've always thought that living monstrous scarecrows were cool. But this scarecrow also has kind of like a cool backstory, this kind of like sad widower backstory. This guy like built this scarecrow after his wife died, and it like becomes like the slave to whoever kind of owns this like cane or whatever. Like I said, I've only seen these episodes once. I'm literally just recalling them, but that was a really good episode. Really, really good effects. There's also one more episode that I really wanted to shout out, and I think it's in the second episode of Creepshow, and it stars that actor. I know him mostly from the movie Road Trip, because I saw that when I was a little kid, but I know he's also the main actor in The New Guy, and he's also been in Z Nation recently. But there's a really good episode with him in it where he's like playing this kind of like loser guy who's like gone through this divorce and stuff, and he has like really shitty stepkids and all this stuff, and he ends up finding like this little finger that he brings home that ends up growing into this monster, and the monster is like his pet, like his little buddy, but will go and violently kill anybody who even minorly inconveniences him. Like even the telemarketers that bother him, the monster will like go across the country, like disappear for a week, and then come back with like the heart of like his his ex-wife or his stepkids or something like that. And it's a really good episode, and it ends brilliantly too, in kind of like that classic comeuppance trope with the character in an insane asylum like swearing to the doctors that he had this monster who killed all these people, and it's like that perfect Cabinet of Dr. Caligari thing where it's like, oh, did that all really happen, or is he just, you know, completely cuckoo in the nutty bin? There are a lot of really good episodes. Even there's a genie episode that's not necessarily like I didn't like it at first, and it kind of grew on me the more I thought about it, where this like kind of loser character brings the wrong bag home from the airport, and it's got like this genie guy who's like folded up inside of the guy's luggage, and anytime he's in pain he spits out coins. And then like the loser kid's girlfriend and roommate, they kind of like start abusing this and taking advantage of it and stealing the coins. That's a really good episode. It's a good episode. I shouldn't say it's a really good episode because I wasn't the biggest fan of it at first, but it grew on me over time the more that I thought about it. All in all, like, for the good, it really feels like the filmmakers are having a good time, and it really feels like Greg Nicotero and some of the other people who are like really manning the helm here are making sure that they do this right, and there's like just enough fan service, and they're really keeping that comic book feel, and they're keeping it really fun and really gory and kind of goofy, and it's not taking itself overly seriously, which I think is a big problem sometimes with like horror today. There's so much stuff that's just like good, but it's like kind of pretentious. And that's just my opinion, but I feel like there's an saturation of like kind of heady horror that I like, but it's like too much. It's kind of like the mid-2000s zombie craze, you know? It just feels a little too much, at times, and it's nice to see something that's just fun and colorful and bloody and kind of has like this comic booky Return of the Living Dead type feel. So yeah, I cannot praise this series enough. On to some of the things that I'm a little lukewarm on. You know, the effects in each episode vary, which you would expect with it being like different directors and I'm assuming different production teams. But the wraparound stories with the creeper in it, it really just doesn't look as good as I would want. I feel like nowadays, in 2019, your like creeper monster puppet should be at least as good as the Crypt Keeper from the late 80s. And it doesn't. It's like not as sophisticated of a puppet. I mean, I know that it's not talking, but you can tell that like a lot of times it's just a mask that doesn't have any like facial movements or anything. There's definitely like no animatronic within the puppet. It's a small gripe because he's not around very much, but every time he, you know, comes in and out, and he doesn't really introduce stories because he doesn't talk, he just kind of sighs and growls and stuff. But every time he comes in, it's just a little jarring with how low budget the creeper looks. I kind of wish they maybe put a little bit more TLC into it. And that also goes for the opening credits. Once again, it's a small gripe. It feels a lot lower budget than I think that it actually is. Either that or some of these filmmakers and some of these production crews are really getting the most out of like the budget that they're given. They're really doing a good job working within the parameters of that box. There's some episodes that are just a little lackluster for me. There's one, God, I can't even remember the name of it, with this like businesswoman who doesn't give her lesbian lover this promotion, and they end up getting in a fight and she accidentally kills her lesbian lover, and then they get like, she gets stuck in the elevator with the girl's body, and it just kind of felt like a lame ripoff of that movie Devil, that M. Night Shyamalan movie. Which is actually not that bad of a movie. And it's not that bad of a short, it just was, I don't know, it just wasn't my favorite. The same goes for the zombie one with, oh god, David Arquette is in it, but he's like barely in it. He doesn't really have anything to do. And it's funny because when that episode started, you could tell that it was supposed to sort of be a post-apocalyptic world, where these people are like in jail, and you see David Arquette. I was like really excited to see where this was going, and it just kind of ended up being a little bit of a lame story. And right like towards the end, you get this weird backstory of like the dead returning to life and eating the living, but it's all told in comic book panels because they didn't have enough money to shoot any of that, and it just felt like crowbarred in. And then, like, I don't know, this society who we never really see holds these, like, events where they, like, put people just up to their necks in a baseball diamond, and these zombies with no arms or legs eat their faces. And you don't even really get to see very much of that. It just felt like a weird story to have in there. Generally, as a rule, I don't really like zombie stories within an anthology format. I don't know why. It just kind of like feels weird to have like all these different spooky kind of ghost tales, and then to like have a story where the world's ending is just kind of strange. That being said, the next one that I wanted to talk about is like not quite as bad. I just wasn't as on board with the latest episode, where it's like this doctor who discovers these eels that will suck the fat out of people. What he doesn't realize is that like the eels are laying eggs inside of people, and there's like this big eclipse, and everyone who's had this like fat reduction surgery like all the worms start coming out of them. And that's kind of felt a little bit like a Doomsday type episode that I was fine with, just because it was a small amount of people. But in a whole, that episode just, I don't know, it just kind of felt weird in Creepshow. I think that anthology horror films or series are like at their best when it's just kind of like either spooky ghost stuff or monster stuff. I think that when you kind of get into like sci-fi, doomsday, zombies taking over the world, it for whatever reason, for me personally, it just doesn't work so well. And then also there was a moment where I started to maybe lose a little bit of faith in the series. By around the 3rd or 4th episode, they had like their Halloween episode, and that was the one with the genie that was like the second part of the little 2-parter. And like I said, I wasn't high on that episode when I first saw it. And the one that came before it I thought was pretty lame as well. It was like these kids who were killed on Halloween all these years ago, and every Halloween since they returned to like kill one of the kids that killed them. And it's not that it was bad, it's just that both of those episodes were like a little bit lackluster. And I was like, the series starts on such a high note with the first 2 episodes, and then it kind of took this little lull for a minute, and I started to feel a little bit like, where is this going? And then it kicked right back in. Overall, I've got to say, I love Creepshow. Like, this is the first time in a very long time that I, like, cannot wait for the next episode to come out. I mean, the only other series I can think of in recent memory that I did that was not a horror series. It was Chernobyl, which I guess is maybe sort of a horror sci-fi series in a way. But, man, I cannot remember the last time I was so taken with a horror TV show, and I just wait for the new episodes to come out all the time. Shit, there might even be a new episode out right now. But like I said, Creepshow was renewed for a 2nd season on Shudder. If you have not checked it out, do yourself a favor and subscribe to Shudder. I mean, other than having some good original content, they have like a revolving door of great old horror films, a lot of Fulci films, a lot of Argento films. You can find like a lot of stuff on there that you may have like not really wanted to take a chance on with like buying an expensive Blu-ray or a DVD. I know there's a lot of things on Shudder that I sort of discovered. I wasn't really sure about spending the money. Stuff like Threads, and I've discovered like that I love that movie, and now I'm definitely gonna buy the Blu-ray. So